I'm a sad man. They're sad. Where's my sad people at? Anybody? Oh yeah. Get ready for some relatable stuff then. I am sad because I am, say it with me everybody, getting a divorce. Where were you guys? Oh boy. Oh, life's a treat. It is rough. I literally signed final divorce papers on Tuesday of this week, like 3 days ago. That's not like a comedy 3 days, that's like real life 3 days. Like 9/10 was kind of my 9/11. And that's in poor taste, but I've got like a week to tell that joke. It sucks, oh my god. I truly cannot overstate the degree to which my life has changed throughout the course of this year. Like I went from living in a nice apartment with my wife and dog to at one point a couple months ago, sleeping on the floor of a disgusting apartment where the other two residents were a magician and a 64-year-old Indian man who looked exactly like my dad. Weirdly like my dad. For some context, I'm actually half Indian. My dad's from India. My mom is a tiny white lady from Wisconsin, which apparently results in a Mexican man. It was very odd living with this guy because he looked so much like my dad that in some ways it was actually kind of comforting because I felt like my dad was there supporting me through this terrible time. But on the other hand, this guy is divorced and works in the complaint department at LaGuardia Airport. There's a part of me that was like, is this just me from the future trying to warn myself? I don't know if you've ever shared a fridge with your destiny, but it's alarming. I find that people don't really know what to say when you tell them the bad news that you're getting divorced. Usually people try to say nice things too, they try to compliment you. But they don't know how it like comes off necessarily. Like one thing I keep hearing is like, dude, that sucks, but like you're a good looking guy. Which is a very interesting way to be like, hey, just so you know, it wasn't your face that was the problem. It's who you are as a person. There's always some version of that. It's like, oh man, it's terrible, but I mean, you look great. You've heard of shredding for the wedding, but have you heard of not eating because your marriage is collapsed? I'm too hungry to rhyme. Here's my favorite one that somebody threw at me. They're like, dude, you're going to be fine. You got big dick energy. And I was like, I don't even agree with that. Just so you know, I've got some real small dick self-esteem. That's where I'm at. It could always be worse. That's one that people like to say a lot. And it's always the same frame of reference. So I was like, hey man, it could be worse. You know, think about it. There's people out there who are starving. Also weird. I don't understand how that's helpful. Like, hey, I know you're very depressed, but have you considered thinking about famine? That'll lift your spirits. It's a cliche, but it is true. It is true that it could always be worse. I accept that. And I say that for sure because I unfortunately know another comic who is also going through a divorce, and this idiot literally used his engagement photo with his wife as his album cover of his comedy album. And, oh wait, that's also me. Fuck. Oh boy! That was a misfire there. People like to ask if there were signs. That's a big one, where there were signs. And I'm exhausted of answering, so I've just been answering in joke form, which is more entertaining. People ask if there were signs. I'm like, no, I don't know. You know, she had an iPhone and I had the Android, but I figured we could work it out. So this one takes a little bit more commitment, but I think it's worth it if you commit to it. Indulge me. Just ask me if I saw the signs.
Did you see any signs?
I saw the signs, and it opened up my eyes. I saw the signs. I gotta say, life is demanding without understanding, and I think if there's anything I'll have learned from this whole situation is that no one's gonna drag you up and into the light where you belong. If you did not get that reference, you are too young for me to read on. Draw the line. Well, the good news is that now I'm able to talk about it on stage, and I wasn't able to do that for a long time because when we were still separated, I didn't know how it was going to play out. I didn't want to air that out in front of people. And the hardest part about that was, all I do is talk about my life on stage, and now my life is changing dramatically, and I'm in this position where I have to figure out how to transition from relatable married comedian to statistically more relatable divorced comedian. But I was having to do these shows where I was telling all my old marriage jokes out of necessity, and it felt very weird. And I had a show in May that I did. It was a callback for something that was very important. And they had set it up in such a way where they were like, whatever jokes you did when you first auditioned, you have to do those jokes tonight. And I had auditioned long enough ago that at the time my set was like 5 minutes about being happily married. And I was freaking out, and I called my mom. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I need some advice. And she was like, look, you're an amazing performer. I know you're going to get through this show. And if it makes you feel any better, I read this article one time about Weird Al Yankovic. Apparently, his parents died of carbon monoxide poisoning on the same day, and he did a show that night. It's like, if he can do that, you can do this. First of all, Jesus Christ! No such a morbid thing. Also, I feel like you're missing the point. The whole issue for me is that all of my jokes are about being happily married, and now that's not true anymore, so I don't want to do them. And I feel bad for Weird Al Yankovic. I don't think he had a bunch of songs about his parents being alive. My dad cracks me up because he, like I said, he's an Indian dude, and he lives up the stereotype of being like cheap Indian man. But the funny thing about him is that he's incredibly generous about large sums of money, and then cheaper the smaller the amount of money is. He's about principle or something. So throughout this whole process, he's been like, look, you've got enough on your plate. I don't want you to be worried about money. If you need $5,000 tomorrow, just say the word. And he means that. And yet, my parents are on my cell phone plan. They refused to get smartphones until like 2 years ago. And we share data. And every month, rather than divide it evenly, my dad will go to the Verizon website and look up the exact percentage of data that he used. And then he will write me a check for that exact amount to the penny. A check, because he doesn't do Venmo. So once a month, I get this check from my dad for like $18.31. And I was giving him a hard time about it recently because I was like, Dad, I don't understand how you live in a world where you would give me $5,000 without thinking about it, but you're not going to round it up to 20. And I didn't understand why I was so frustrated. And I was like, look, let me explain it differently. Like if we went out to eat, right, and we got like mozzarella sticks, and there were 10 of them, and we paid $10, and I ate 6 and you ate 4, would you seriously ask me to give you $6? He's like, Adam, that's not the same thing, but of course! But it's interesting now because I'm starting to date a little bit. I'm not really like getting out there yet, but it's a new world. Like I've never been single in New York, first of all. It's very daunting. And I think the hardest part about it for me is that I'm a virgin because I was saving myself for my second marriage. It's absurd, but it made me laugh when I wrote it. But I'm fortunate that I work in a kind of field where I can meet people in real life fairly easily, but that also means I have to show some discretion, which I'm learning. And like a couple weeks ago, a girl came up to me after the show. She wanted to give me her number, which I'm fine with. And then I found out she was 21, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm 32, and there was just this discussion that I had in my brain where I was like, on one hand, she's very attractive, but on the other hand, she still had baby teeth when Obama got elected. What kind of man do I want to be? But to be clear, there's not like a lot of women approaching me after shows. What I'm getting mostly is guys who are also divorced, who feel like they found like an ally. Like talk about how much they hate women with, and I'm like, I'm not here for that at all. And the funny thing about these guys is that most of the people that are coming up and talking to me, within a minute of talking to them, I'm like, I see why you're divorced. You're seriously I want to be grouped in with you. Like there was a guy who I met recently after a show. He was so excited to talk to me, and he looked just whatever you think of when you think of a douchebag, whatever that means to you. Just picture that. And he came up to me and he was like, dude, that was amazing. Like I totally get where you're coming from. I'm divorced too. I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, just get ready though. These women in New York are fucking bitches. I was like, coming in hot. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, they're so stuck up. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, yeah, I was with this girl a couple weeks ago. She wouldn't even let me come in her mouth. I was with you like 30 seconds. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm with this girl. She's going down on me. All of a sudden, she won't let me finish in her mouth. I was like, that's a deal breaker for me. And I stood there for a second. I've never said this to anybody in 32 years of being alive, but I looked at this guy and I was like, you need to work on yourself. I left the room. And I handled it well. We are in the process of splitting things up. That really sucks. She's keeping the top half of the dog. We don't have kids, fortunately, and we don't share equity or anything like that. But we do, the two main things we own, we got a car that we bought together, we had a vacation package. I really wanted the car, because I'm a comedian and I drive around telling jokes, but she was being kind of spiteful about it, and I was like, I'm not going to fight anymore, just if you want the car, whatever, I'll take the vacation package. It doesn't sound that terrible right now, until I tell you, and I swear to God this is true. That vacation package is located at the resort in the Dominican Republic where people keep dying for no reason. That's true. I know it's coming up out of this year. If any of you are looking for a hot deal on a vacation package, that will be available after the show. Give me a great price and I'll throw in a one-way ticket to the Dominican Republic. It's the right thing to do. You definitely, you learn things about yourself when you're going through something traumatic. Like I've learned this year that I am much stronger than I thought I was and also significantly weaker. In the past 2 weeks, I have had a very composed conversation with a divorce lawyer, but I also cried at the dentist's office because my dentist shook my hand in what I perceive to be a kind way. That's my answer. I go to an Indian dentist, and the first time I went there after my appointment, he goes, hey, I hope you don't mind, but I always like to ask new patients what made you choose our office. I was like, oh, you know, you've got really good ratings online, and my dad is Indian, so he's like, oh, say no more. It's always great to have a fellow Indian in the office. I realized only minorities can say shit like this. If you're white and you go to the dentist, and afterwards he asks you why you chose that office. I'm like, well, you know, you got really good ratings online, and between you and me, I just feel like us white should stick together. Good look, I would not recommend that. I'll leave you folks tonight on a more positive note. I know I've been a little bit of a downer, but I've been trying to think of the positives that are coming from this situation. One of the things somebody recommended I do is come up with like a pros and cons list. So I've been working on my pros and cons. And I'll share them with you before I leave. I'll start with the cons and then with the pros, and then we'll all be happy when I leave. All right, here we go. Okay, first con. My life is falling apart. That's not good. Pro, hold on, pro. I just finished watching all of Netflix. So much time. Oh my God. Con, I feel like I want to die all the time. Pro, I don't have to use the incognito tab for porn anymore. Positives come out of this. Con, I keep bursting into tears without warning. I alluded to that. Pro, I have a renewed appreciation for the slow half of Drake's catalog. Some good tunes. A couple more. Con, I may never love again. Pro, I get to spread the fuck out in my bed. And last but not least, con, I spent a large portion of this year technically being homeless. That was rough. Pro, I now have a significantly better backstory for America's Got Talent. So, watch out for me, everybody. You know what to do. I'm